E-learning development is not instructional design, and learning Articulate Storyline does not make you an instructional designer. When you realize this, you won't just have much more success in your interviews and on the job market, but you'll also be able to make a much bigger impact on the job. So let's be real, there is a very big emphasis on e-learning in the field right now. So many teams that I talk to and instructional designers that I work with, that's what they're doing on a regular basis. They are churning out e-learning courses. That's kind of the state of our field. So learning a tool like Storyline can definitely help you become employed, especially if you're coming from the education space. So if you have an education background, you probably are familiar with how people learn and how to help people learn. And the instructional design specific technology is often one of the biggest skill gaps. So it makes sense. If you're going to start your journey to becoming an instructional designer, it's okay to start with learning a tool like Storyline because it is so in demand. But please do not end there. So if you're starting by learning the e-learning development software, you don't want to end there. You don't want to think, okay, I've got the software down. I am officially an instructional designer, because that will be a recipe for disaster. And one of the ways that disaster will come to light is if you respond to instructional design interview questions with a response about Storyline. I've heard some horror stories about this, but if a hiring manager, for example, is talking to you about how you might solve an instructional design problem or help improve employee performance, or revamp some training, for example, if you start talking about how Articulate Storyline can help you create some really cool interactions and make some really engaging e-learning, you're kind of entirely missing the point of what an instructional designer does. And hopefully this video will be a starting point to help you out with that. So instructional design generally is what happens before e-learning development. If you need some more background with that, check out the instructional designer versus e-learning developer video. I'll link that in the description. But overall, the instructional design piece of the puzzle is where you're going to learn about your audience, learn about the problem at hand, and learn what you're trying to accomplish. So you may hear this referred to as analysis. And this is very important if you want to be effective as an instructional designer. So you need to know who you're serving, what their work environment looks like, what the goal even is. If you're just designing e-learning, but you don't know what the actual goal is for the business or the organization, you're probably not going to be getting the organization closer to that goal. So you want to figure out where the people are at, you want to figure out where they need to be, and then you want to make sure you have an appropriate solution to help them get from point A to point B. That's how you think more like an instructional designer. You want to identify appropriate solutions based on that data you get from the analysis. Maybe you're conducting the analysis, maybe your organization has already conducted some analysis and they make that data available to you, but Articulate Storyline e-learning courses are not always going to be the right solution. In a lot of cases, it probably will not make sense for the task at hand. So for example, imagine you have some retail employees who are constantly working on the sales floor and they only have mobile devices available to them. You're probably not going to want to design a 60-minute self-paced e-learning course for them to go and sit down and take. That would be a really good time to create some sort of mobile-friendly micro-learning interactions so that if and when they have a few extra minutes, they can take it out and complete one of them. So that's where knowing the people's situation that you're trying to serve can really help you identify appropriate solutions. And in that case, you probably wouldn't be using Storyline, for example. Another example, imagine you're serving people who are working on a factory floor. They're working in a factory, and you need them to follow a specific process in order to achieve the business goal, but they're not following the process. So the solution probably isn't a 60-minute e-learning course to teach them the process. You could probably just print out a job aid laying out the process, laminate it, and hang those posters all throughout the workspace. And then people can use that as performance support. So there's a lot of nuance to this. That's just a couple of examples. But if you're being asked a question like that to identify an appropriate solution and you're diving into how interactive and great your e-learning courses are, again, you're kind of missing the point there. So it's just important to know that there are different types of solution that will be more suitable to the situation at hand. That's a good starting place if you're new to thinking like an instructional designer. But when you can do this well, when you can look at the facts and look at the analysis data and think, okay, where do we need to be? What do these people actually need to achieve the goal? if you can think outside of the box on what types of solutions you can implement there, that's how you think like an instructional designer, and showing off that thought on your portfolio and in your interviews is going to go a very, very long way with certain teams. And then you can also use instructional design theory to guide your storyboarding and e-learning design. So it doesn't just stop at the analysis phase and then recommending an appropriate solution. And then you're like, okay, e-learning is the solution. Let me just use my storyline skills to make something with a lot of different interactions. Again, that is falling short of what an instructional designer does, because you can apply instructional design theory not just to like lay out and create your storyboard. For example, like with Gagne's 9 events, that can help you include all of the necessary elements to promote learning. But you can also use things like Mayer's multimedia principles to make decisions about which animations to include on the screen and which tone of voice to use in your storyboard, and so many other things. And I have videos about each of these things. I will link them in the description. But I also, next week, I'm going to record like a really in-depth introduction to instructional design video. And we're going to dive deep into like the processes, the theories, how you can actually apply those theories, just to help you all get very well-rounded on the instructional design side of things. Because again, you really want to do that justice. Don't just stop at storyline, because you're going to be missing a big piece of the instructional designer's skill set. So again, I'll link all the relevant resources in the description. I will have at least 2 new instructional design theory videos coming out over the following 2 weeks, so feel free to subscribe for those. I think I'll be bringing them live on Thursdays, and if enough of you want to see more of these theory videos, I will keep them coming after that as well. And then I'm also creating the instructional design project lab. So this is going to be like a very practice-oriented learning experience. We're going to get some hands-on practice conducting an analysis and applying instructional design theory to some real-world projects. So if you're interested in that, we're going to do the pre-sale in a couple of weeks, and I will give you more details on the mailing list. So let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for making it to the end of this video, and I will see you next week in the next one.